So, we've probably all heard that passage that Paul wrote to Timothy. A woman shall not wear her hair braided, wear gold, pearls, or expensive clothes. I permit no woman to teach or have authority over a man. She is to keep silent. Well, all I can say is thank goodness we're not back then. And there's a certain irony that the fact that most arguments over the decades, in recent years at least, and probably for the best part of a couple of 100 years, around how you measure that a woman is submitting to her husband, those women all wear gold rings on their fingers. But apparently we're supposed to submit but not wear gold. So clearly we're just, not paying attention. But Paul gets a bit of a bad rep because in some ways the conversion of Lydia shows that there was context to that even then. Because Lydia sold purple cloth, so she was one of those rich, wealthy women. She ran her household and she sold something which was entirely frivolous, because quite frankly none of us need purple clothes, although I do like wearing purple and blue and all of the great colours. But that passage was used for a long time to justify, and is still used in some settings, to justify men's authority over women. And it was used in many different ways, one of which was to perpetuate the system which began in ancient Greece, that men can vote and women can't. In ancient Greece, which is when all of this happened, wealthy men who owned property could vote and no one else. Women were seen as decorative, or perhaps not clever enough. And even 100 years ago in the UK, when the votes for women were granted in 1918, the argument about why it wasn't equalised with men, because it wasn't, were that younger women would only follow what their husbands said or their fathers. So what was the point? Well, I can tell you this, I never voted what my father told me to do, and I certainly wouldn't now. But 100 years ago, women over 30, or who owned property, or were spinsters in university towns and teaching, because apparently they were special, were allowed to vote. It was another 10 years before all women over 21 would be allowed to vote on an equal basis to men. So you might wonder what that picture in the middle is about. For those who are eagle-eyed, might realise that the little girl on the right is me. For some reason, that's the one picture that we have of me looking cheeky and my sister looking serious. The lady in the middle is my great-grandmother. In 1918, she was graduating with a chemistry degree, but she was too young to be allowed to vote because she was 21, which was the age that men could vote. She had to wait till 1928 to be allowed to vote. And the argument that women were too stupid... Now, I will grant you that when my grandmothers were debating who should be the leader of the Conservative Party, because they were both members, don't judge, please, their decision was being based on the colour of the tie that the gentlemen concerned wore, which I do agree is a pretty stupid basis for making a decision. But overall, I'm pretty sure there are several men around who would make similarly stupid judgments, although maybe it's not the colour of the tie, but there are equally stupid reasons. It's all excuses. There is no argument that Hillary Clinton, Theresa May, Angela Merkel, or Ruth Ginsburg are too stupid to vote. They are leaders of this world. And there are many more. I could have named Margaret Thatcher, but sometimes that's a bit of a swear word, so we won't go there. But But why did it take so long for women to be allowed to vote? Well, the too stupid argument stuck for quite a while, but that's a bit difficult in this country because you think about the fact that for a long time we've had some pretty powerful women queens who ruled the country without any argument, but apparently women are too stupid to vote. But the real argument is almost certainly about power and authority. When people have got the vote, it's almost always been unequal. Canada granted the vote in 1918 to women too, but only white women. Saudi Arabia brings up the rear on when women got the vote with 2015. But even in Europe, Switzerland didn't allow all women to vote until 1991. Yes, 1991. You would think that would be a quite modern country. The UK was a bit behind the times. The Isle of Man managed to get there in 1881. It took us a bit longer on the mainland. But we imposed our power dynamics when we travelled the world. Prior to European rule in Canada, and in fact the United States, many First Nations allowed women to lead, and in fact it was commented on in 1654 that women ruled their local councils. So why was this allowed to continue? Unfortunately, it's the same reason that we still have race dynamics and we still have politics that's designed to exclude certain categories of voter. If you are poor, it is much more likely that you cannot prove that you live in a place that allows you to vote. In America, if you're poor, you don't have ID and you need ID to vote. All of these things cost money. All of those things are ways for the wealthy and the in power to exclude other people from voting. And when the campaign against women's suffrage was run in the United States, and similar campaigns existed here, they came back and justified it using Paul. Using the passages that said, I permit no woman to teach or have authority over a man. She is to keep silent. Let a woman learn in silence with full submission. Those who know me know I'm not very good at silent. Last January, the women of the world gathered and marched in cities everywhere. We marched alongside men to make a point that we cannot be silenced. Today, we still need to look for the justifications that don't stack up. It is not our place, and nor did Paul ever expect women to always be silent. It is cultural. I do not go into certain places in the world and expect to have the same respect as other people. I dress in different ways when I go to work because it is culturally expected, and that's the way I get respect. When Paul wrote to the people, and he wrote to Timothy, they were living in a society in which if women did not behave in a certain way, the whole community would be shunned. When he met with Lydia, she was already an established leader in her community and a wealthy woman, and could continue to be treated in that way with respect. So today, in a society where in general, women are treated with respect. Well, we kind of hope so, but it doesn't always work. The question of whether women can and should be allowed to vote is no longer a question we face very often. But the question of whether women should be allowed respect, the question of whether everyone in society should have equal access to the ability to vote is rarely discussed, and yet everyone in society is affected by the results of those votes. So women's suffrage in this country may be a battle long past, but equal suffrage is far from done. So I apologise, tonight there are some unusual songs amongst the list, because these songs are still anthems, and they are still anthems because they fill a need to recognise that the equal but different and the somehow less than, which is always implied by that statement, is still pervasively used in certain communities and has no place in our modern society. So I challenge you and myself to question the people who say that a woman has a certain role, or question the people who say, but if we just move this voting boundary, it's not going to change anything, or but you have to be registered at an address to vote, or but you need something specific, you need an ID card to vote. These are our battles today. We have a president of the United States who thinks it's acceptable to deny who he is, and thinks it's acceptable to treat women and call them dogs. That's the leader of the free world. We cannot stop calling for respect and equality. Amen.